Hey guys, if you're interested in real estate investing, you're in the right place. This is actually going to be our very first live together. And we're going to answer questions for those of you who are wanting to get into real estate investing to get your very first deal. We're covering a strategy that's really great to start out with because you don't actually need a lot of money to buy a property. You could actually build your skills looking for rundown homes and then make a finder's fee, talking like $10,000 to $50,000, I would say is average from the deals that we talk, the success stories that we get to hear on the DealMachine podcast. A little bit about who we are. And again, that strategy is called wholesaling real estate, where you can make that money for finding a rundown house. And also it's great for another reason. You get to build your skills by, passing that house to an investor who can end up doing something with it, who does buy it for cash, and you can flip it or turn it into a rental, etc. And so I'm David Lecko. I created a process that's helped people close 10,000 deals in all 50 states with the software platform called DealMachine.
And my name is Ryan Haywood. Back in 2019, I left my 9-to-5 job and I started full-time wholesaling. There was absolutely no build-up to it. I left and we completed our first deal in 14 days. I made more in that 14 days than I made in an entire month in my 9-to-5. And we have gone on to do over 400 transactions. And so we are very excited to coach through that and walk you through that process on getting out of your 9-to-5.
Yes, if you have a question, we would like to actually bring you on the live stream to not only ask your question, but just have a conversation with us about where you're at and how you can get unstuck if you're stuck trying to actually get into real estate investing. So if you have a question, go ahead and post it in the chat, but know that we're going to then want to invite you to join this live with a link to the software we're using called Riverside. So let's see here. So some of the memorable, we've done this Q&A before a few times, not live. But some of the memorable ones for me, Ryan, was, we were talking with somebody who I met at the auto repair shop.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
Yeah, they were really into cars, but I think they wanted to kind of elevate, maybe even to drive cars. And they were like, I love working on them, but I know it costs money to go drive. And I'm curious how you guys can help me out there with real estate investing. So for somebody like that, I think we'd recommend wholesaling because you could practice your skills and then you could look for a rundown home and get paid a finder's fee for learning. I mean, if you could learn and get paid, that's pretty good. I would pay to learn sometimes. I mean, a lot of people do, right? Sure. That's school.
That's school.
Exactly. But even in the work environment, let's say I want to spend $10,000 to try a new strategy. I actually recently did that. And that was with a lot of times we find really great real estate deals because they are run down, and there's many scenarios where the house is run down and somebody prefers speed and convenience to get rid of that property. So one of the thoughts I had was like, hey, maybe people who have had evictions, who have had to, deal with a tenant that wasn't paying, maybe they might want to sell their property for a discount. So I actually pulled the evictions list, paid $400. I don't know anyone who pulls this list. So by the way, this is what I mean by I'm actually paying to learn in my business all the time, because that's how you develop an edge. So I haven't gotten any deals from that so far. I spent about $2,000 sending mail out to that list. And then I spent about $200 actually, I pay call porter to answer my phone calls, by the way. So I've had about five calls that came in from that so far, but not done a deal yet. So that's just an example of in my business, I would pay to learn, but in wholesaling, you really get paid to learn, which is fantastic. So I see a few people that are on and watching, but I'm just curious if you guys have any questions, if you guys want to let us know.
Yeah, something, David, that we like to remind people is when you're wholesaling, it's not just wholesaling to wholesale. And to your point, you're learning how to evaluate and analyze deals that could potentially be deals that you take down one day, because that is part of the process of like leaving your 9 to 5 is creating some passive income. And the best way to learn how to analyze a deal is wholesaling. You're going in and you're looking at this property, you're trying to analyze the property, you're trying to come up with a rehab budget for a property, and you're pitching that to other investors who also like it. They might even give you feedback on like, hey, we think that this price is here. We think it's going to cost this much, and you should just be listening, and learning and sharpening your tools, so that when it comes time for you to buy your own, you're ready to go.
You can't be sharpening your stools.
No, you can't. Your tools, though.
So tell me about, were you nervous when, like, in 2019, I know you said your boss quit. No. You quit your job.
Yeah.
Your boss still had his job, but your boss restructured your commission structure. So you were basically putting in all this work and you were making a lot of money. And the boss was like, I don't like that. I don't like how much money you're making. He thought it was a good deal at first, but then when he realized how much you were good at sales, he didn't like you taking home that much. So that kind of ticked you off, right? I mean, most people don't quit their job unless they have another one lined up, but it ticked you off so much. I mean, you just quit, right?
They did that 3 different times. That was the thing, is like and they kept structuring it like, oh, this is going to be better. You can make more. And it's like, no, but I can make more, but you're putting on like so much more pressure that it's just not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze. Like being away from my home. Oh, dude, I've never told this story on here. So here's a new one. Father's Day back in 2018. It was, I'd gotten tickets to Monster Jam to go with my oldest son, Fletcher, to go to Monster Jam on Father's Day Saturday. Okay. And the boss at this company was like, hey, on Saturday, you're going to work at an event. And I had requested the day off like 3 or 4 weeks in advance because we got tickets to go to Monster Jam.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're going to work this event. I'm like, man, I can't. I already requested it off. And he's like, no, you're going to. I'm like, I can't. I've already requested the day off. Push come to shove, like he had that kind of power and authority over me that I ended up having to work it because I was afraid I was going to get fired if I didn't. Like that is the most ridiculous thing anybody should ever have to deal with. Like you shouldn't be able to be forced when you've requested your time off. You shouldn't be able to be forced to go back in and work on a day that you requested off well in advance. So anyhow, like fast forward, I go to this event. There's other sales employees that they had hired that one of them showed up at like 3 hours after the fact. And I'm like, I just happened to ask. I'm like, hey, how come you didn't have to be here early this morning? Oh, I had a hair appointment. I'm like, okay. Like you just start to realize how bogus some of the things that they do in these corporate environments where they favor some other people. And to me, I was like, I am not doing this. So I ended up packing up and leaving that event, and I ended up going to Monster Jam.
That's I did not know that about you. I've been to Monster Jam. It was pretty exciting.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much if I thought I was going to lose my job.
Yeah, the whole time I was there, and I know that the things that he said getting off the phone call, because he had called me and he's like, why are you leaving? And I told him, look, there's a long story behind that. It was pouring rain. Nobody was there. There's no sense in us sitting out here in the pouring rain. So, yeah, but the way that he left it was that come Monday, I could be fired. And he's like, enjoy your weekend. I'm like that. Megan and I had already determined, like, there has to be a change. We have to find some way to get out of here. And we didn't know what that was, like, but we knew that getting out had to be next, because just being talked to like that, like being diminished as a human being, is just not any way that anybody should have to live. And so we knew that we had to get out. We didn't know what that exit strategy was going to be, but we knew it had to happen.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just, you sit there and you're, the whole time I'm at Monster Jam, trying to pay attention to my, at the time, I don't know, it'd been, what, he had been 4-year-old son, who is absolutely in all of these gigantic trucks jumping 10 to 20, 30 feet in the air. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking I could be fired on Monday.
Right. It's
Like,
an
that's
awful
so
feeling when you're
stupid.
trying to spend time with your family. Hey, if you
Oh,
have a question, hop on as a guest with us. I put the link down in the actual YouTube live. So we've gotten one question from SRT Eddie. Eddie, we'd love it for you to join us, man. Click that link and hop on in here with us. So what are the requirements to join wholesaling? That's what Eddie wants to know. There's not any requirements, man. You basically just find a rundown house, you get it under contract, and then you pass it off to an investor, and they pay you an assignment fee, which first deal, $5,000. The key is you're finding somebody who's got a rundown house and then urgently needs to sell their house. So a few examples. I'm going to walk through about 4 or 5 examples of my exact deals. So my very first house, it was sitting on the market for 120 days. Like nobody was buying it. So then I just made an offer for like 70% of their list price. They accepted it. My second deal, I sent around postcards. I found a house with a tarp on the roof. The guy called me back 7 months later. It's not always right away, but after 7 months, that house was run down. Then he had surgery. That was the actual tip of the iceberg, the first domino, so to say, that made him be like, oh yeah, I got to get out of here. And he can't sell that house with a tarp on the roof. Nobody's going to qualify for a loan to buy that house. So he wanted speed and convenience. That's when I came in with a cash offer. He accepted it. So once you're at that stage, then what you could do is you could go to real estate meetups and say, I got this deal under contract. Who wants to buy it that's fixing and flipping houses? Somebody buys it for you for $10,000 more than you got under contract. You make the $10,000 assignment fee at closing. You never pay to close on that house. You just make the assignment fee. So those are 2 examples of like an urgent situation where the person preferred speed and convenience. Another one was, I bought this house for $44,000 and it took $70,000 to fix it up, but then it was worth $120,000 afterwards, right? So there's $40,000 of meat on the bone there, where once I had it under contract for 44, I could have passed it. I could have brought it to that investor meetup again and be like, hey, I've got this house, really great deal. Will you guys buy it for 55? Then I make $11,000. So those are 3 examples of why somebody would want to be selling their house to you at a discount. It's like the house is run down, and then also something in their life happens where they just really need to get rid of it. That house in particular was owned by 2 elderly people, and they passed away. And so the son needed to settle debts on their estate within 30 days. So definitely didn't have time to fix it up. Probably didn't have the money to fix it up, but he needed the cash from selling the house to go settle some other debts that they had. So that's another reason why somebody, bought that house. And then there's a house 2 doors down the entire time, like 5 months. I was like working on this house, going back and forth to meet with the son of the owners. And then also to do work on it, because I actually did work on it. I didn't wholesale this one. A tree had fallen in the yard on the house 2 doors down. And for like 3-4 months, I'm looking at it, nothing. Nobody's fixing anything. It's just getting worse. The tree fell and it damaged the roof, the gutter. So then that water from the rain was making a mess of the landscaping, pouring out because it didn't have a gutter to route it away. What I did was what's called like a skip trace. It's basically like what a private investigator would do to look up somebody's phone number, a property owner's phone number. So the information about who owns the property is public, but you can't get their phone number. So if they've moved, there's no way to get in touch with them unless you get their phone number. So I pulled open an app, something we offer in DealMachine, and you get their phone number. So I called her. I said, hey, did you know the tree fell in your house? I own the property 2 doors down, or I'm working with the homeowner 2 doors down. She was like, oh my God, I didn't know. I've been living 2 hours away, and I've been helping my daughter, who recently got divorced and had a baby. So she lives 2 hours away in Columbus, Indiana. I had no idea this was happening. Oh my God, like, what am I going to do? I said, no problem. If you want, I was like, I could take care of everything. If you actually are trying to move by your daughter, you don't even have to fix this. Like, I could just give you a cash offer as is. And she ended up asking me for that offer. I figured 65,000 was the most I could pay. So she ghosted me for like a week. But then I gently and friendly followed up, said, hey, do you still want to sell your house? And then out of nowhere, she just like, yes, let's do the deal, right? She had to think about it. She didn't want to talk with me for a little bit. But then she said, yes, let's do the deal. I was like, great. You can leave trash in the house. You can leave anything. That way she could just focus on being with her daughter. And then she had that cash to go find another place to live. And it really solved the headache problem for her when she was in an urgent situation. So those are 4 examples of why somebody would want to sell a house run down to you. Oh, wait, there's one more I want to tell you about. So there's a recent one. You could pull this list on the county website. And it's for people who did not pay their property taxes in the prior year. So if you think about who didn't pay their property taxes, why wouldn't they pay their property taxes? 1, maybe they just forgot. That's happened to me once before. 2, maybe they're having financial trouble. That's actually somebody who would need your help potentially. So I got a call from an orthodontist out of state. He said, yeah, I own this house. I bought it 2 years ago for $200,000. But the guy I was going to partner with to fix it up, AKA his contractor, went MIA. So I've never been in the house. I don't even know what's wrong with the house. I don't think it's livable. I think it's just like bare bones. He said, I'd love to sell it for 180 because that's what I owe on the loan. And I said, let me take a look. Called him back. The most I could pay is 160. So he said, okay, that's fine. Let's just do the deal. It's been a huge headache. I will bring $20,000 to the table to close that deal and pay my back taxes. So that's another reason that it's kind of a head scratcher at first, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a wealthy orthodontist and you got this thing just sucking cash, sucking value from your net worth, it's not a big deal to you because he probably makes maybe $500,000 a year. I don't know what orthodontist makes. They make good money. So he doesn't want this headache anymore. He's been pulling his hair out for 2 years. And so that was a way I was able to solve for him. He actually had a few more deals. I hooked him up with my contractor. I was like, hey, you can sell those other deals to me for a loss as well, but I'll also just try to help you out. Here's my contractor. And latest I heard, my contractor definitely did one deal with them. I didn't hear if they sold it or not, but I know he was appreciative and I was able to give him some value, not only to provide speed and convenience, but, you know, help him out with some boots on the ground that was trustworthy. So those are 5 reasons why somebody would actually want to sell their house to you for a discount. Ryan, what are some reasons that you're familiar with?
Yeah, I think that we deal with a lot of distressed landlords here. One thing that happens often in the rental game is that you have what's called turnover, and turnover can be a very expensive experience. If you have a tenant go in and wreck a house after maybe you've only had them in there for 3 months and they go in and they destroy the house, and you're going to have to potentially put 10, 15,000 that you don't have into the house to get it fixed back up so that you can rent it again. You are what we would explain as a distressed landlord. You don't want to do it, or you don't have the ability to do it. So that could be another motivator to, hey, I need to get this property off of my head and move on with it. A lot of times we will even run across not so distressed landlords, but maybe landlords that are looking to get out of the game, looking to retire. They may have a handful or a portfolio full of properties. They're not maybe like falling down distressed or even in the worst shape, but they're in the kind of shape that they'd be willing to take a discounted price to move on with those properties. We find that often. So tired landlord, distressed landlord. Those are 2 big ones that we run across in our market quite often.
Awesome. Yeah. Tired landlord would be somebody. And I'll say in DealMachine, you could filter all this data. So you could actually pull a tired landlord list. And so that really just means somebody who's owned the property for like 15 years, because a lot of landlords buy properties and they don't do anything with them. So that means they've aged 15 years and haven't been updated.
Yep.
So just so you know, when you're filtering those lists that say tired landlord, that's really what it means. And it's just playing off the fact of most landlord behavior, which is like, well, they don't update their houses very frequently. And after 15 years, it's probably run down. The tenant quality that they're able to attract with an out of date house has probably gone down as well,
Yep.
meaning that it's causing more engagement. It's requiring more engagement with them because lower, I don't want to say lower end, but I'll say like lower price rentals typically have tenants that require more attention, right? I notice that like the higher end rentals, which is kind of what I try to aim for, are easier to maintain, and the residents that live in them are a little bit more like self-sufficient, if you will. And so that's one thing I've noticed. So anyway, that's why the tired landlord exists. That's what it is data wise, in case you're curious. That's why it's important to actually reach out to that as one of your lists that you're reaching out to. Ryan, why did you start when you were starting investing? Why did you start driving for dollars? Like, why didn't you start with the tired landlord list?
Well, part of the easiest answer is because I started a 30-day wholesaling challenge that was based around driving for dollars. Now, hindsight, why was that better than pulling a list? Well, driving for dollars was something that was unique. It was a list that was unique to me. I was out there driving past houses that had boarded up windows, that had tall grass, that the roof was in bad shape, that had tons of debris in their yard, their mailboxes were full. I was seeing all of that stuff live and in person versus pulling a list that honestly several other people are pulling too. And you're the level of competition with everyone that if you're working off lists, everyone else is working on those lists versus
Right.
driving for dollars is your list. Nobody else has that exact list. Nobody else has the exact criteria that you might be looking for. Maybe you're not looking for the one that's about to fall down. Maybe that's not something you want to waste your time with. Maybe you're just looking for houses that have old roofs. Maybe that's just you. I would prefer something to this level because I don't want to deal with the house that's almost caving in. So it's a unique list to you. It's yours. You went out and seen it. You put it together versus the other lists where it's a vacancy list or a absentee owner. Everybody's pulling those lists as well. They're all sending same kind of materials that you're sending in. It's a competition on basically who's going to answer the phone first and get on site first. So I'm a big favor of just being a little bit different than the competition. To me, driving for dollars is still the best way to do it. It's still the fastest way to find a distressed property is to go out there and drive around.
Right. Well, hey, I know this is actually graduation season. A lot of 22-year-olds out there are graduating this month, and they may be getting a call from their parents asking what their plans are after college. And that can be really stressful, especially if you don't have the answer. I was speaking with somebody this past month who I became friends with in Austin because their family lives here. And I'll call him Cameron for now. And, Cameron was like, man, my dad's calling me and I don't know what to do. I'm kind of interested in wholesaling. How would I approach getting into that, from New York, which is where I'm going to college, knowing that I'm coming back to Texas in the summer because I don't have a job. I couldn't get a job in the industry that I'm looking for. So what can we do so I can hit the ground running? So what I had Cameron do is, outside of Austin is like a very high pressure market. There's so many people moving in. That pressure causes the values to go up, right? So there is a lot of demand for homes. There's not a lot of supply. So you can wholesale anywhere. The business model is just like a pawn shop where, hey, people just bring it in because they want speed and convenience, not the best price. But I think it's easier if you go on the outskirts of your city, like 20 minutes around the border of your city. You'll have a much better time there because there's less competition from investors and people trying to buy those homes. So I said, why don't you go south? And it's like south 20 minutes of Austin and find people who are tired landlords, maybe who are absentee owned, people who have not paid their taxes. Those are 3 separate lists. You don't need to layer them on top of each other. Just go pull that list. And Cameron sent about 500 postcards to start with, because Cameron was like, well, I don't have a lot of money and I don't really want to blow it all. And I counteracted that. I was like, I totally get that. If you want to do the most efficient way of getting started, you're going to get there and knock on doors, because that is the cheapest way. And there's no expense with that other than your time. But if you want to hit the ground running, I want to caution you from spending, $20 to send mail to 40 properties, because you will get discouraged over time. You've now told your dad, I'm going to wholesale. However, month is going to pass by. He's going to say, how's it going? You're going to say, I don't have any results. I don't think it's going to work for me, because you simply just didn't do enough marketing. So in order to combat the number one reason why people quit, I said, you need to start with a number that gives you the chance of getting a deal. So 40 properties would not be giving you a great chance of getting a deal. Sure, we've had success stories. Didn't you just interview Delano and he made what did he make in 6 days or something like that?
It was the 90,000. It was an insane amount of money.
So he found a property in 6 days. Okay, that does happen. It's just not the norm. Ryan found a property in less than 2 weeks and got it sold for $8,500. But that is not the norm. So that's why I want to caution you guys and make sure you're doing enough marketing. So I told Cameron, I was like, $500 would be like the bare minimum I would spend to test out direct mail. So we put a postcard together. It said, hey, I'm interested in buying your property. Or it said, is this your property? I'm interested in purchasing it. I could close quickly and with cash. If you're interested, give me a call back and have a great day. There's a photo of the property on it because in DealMachine, we put the Google picture on it. And then there's also a headshot of Cameron on the postcard. So it's like friendly. Pro tip is you'll get more responses back if you actually have a photo rather than a company logo, because people prefer to deal with locals who are an actual person, by the way. It's a big misconception from people that are starting out. They think they need a big corporate presence, but I'm telling you, people prefer to do business with local people. Ryan, you have a photo of you and your family on your postcards, right?
Yeah. We love doing that. People recognize us because we're local. And that's, to me, I always love the local approach to things. I'm fine with wholesaling remotely, but I feel like you have, again, an advantage. If you're wholesaling in the market that you live in, you have an upper hand over anyone else, because people, first off, they recognize your face. And so that's, for us, that's why we're putting our family picture on the postcard. You can see who you're talking with. You can see who you're meeting. A lot of times I'm the one that shows up on the appointments. So they see the postcard, they see my face, and then I show up at their house to walk through a house to do an appointment. And they're like, wow, this is very real for them versus talking to somebody over the phone. My dad, in fact, had over the weekend, he has a house. It's a family home. It's livable, but it's vacant right now. And so he'd gotten a text from a wholesaler that was out of state. And just the way that they were communicating with him, it just felt super impersonal. And to me, I'm like, this example is exactly why I prefer to have boots on the ground in the town that I work on, put my face on the postcard so people can see who they are talking to. I just feel like there's something to that, a secret power to just being able to visualize who it is you're talking to on the phone.
Right. So to continue with Cameron's story, I believe Cameron got 3 calls back. One said they did want to sell, but they had a resident living in the house right now. So I told Cameron I would go to that property to be that boots on the ground. And we're just waiting for him to coordinate a time with the tenant for us to go in and look at the property. We had another person who called Cameron back. It was an 80-year-old woman and said, hey, I'm going to stay in this house until I die. And I asked Cameron, I was like, well, did you ask when she thought that might be? No, I'm just kidding. Cameron dealt with it. Cameron dealt with it very well. Said, no problem. And if you just save my number, if anything changes, which is a great way to do that. And then the guy kind of ghosted, who said he had a tenant in the house and wanted us to take a look at it. So I told Cameron, do not worry about that, because you cannot get caught up. You cannot force somebody to sell you their house.
No.
Okay. Don't worry about if they've ghosted you, because remember my story that I told previously with the tree that fell on the house. She said she had no idea. She wanted an offer. I gave her an offer and she ghosted me for a week, but I stayed friendly. And I said, hey, are you still interested in selling your house? Like a few times. And then she replied, finally, yes, let's do it. So people just need time to think sometimes. And so you need to change your energy from focusing so much on like, oh, that's my deal, that's my house, I should get it, to just finding more houses, getting in touch with more homeowners. That's going to be the path to success. So I told Cameron, why don't you follow up in 1 week and then just say the same thing I did. It's like, hey, are you still interested in getting an offer on your house? And in the meantime, focusing on finding more homes. So TBD, but that's a great, this is a great option for somebody who's in college, doesn't know what to do. I think this generation may be having tougher time finding a job, especially if you're looking for like general, degree, like marketing, fashion. Like it can be tough to get your foot in the door. So in the meantime, I think this generation really wants the freedom to not have a boss that tells them they can't go to Monster Jam. They definitely just want that flexibility. So wholesaling is a great business model for doing that. And it also teaches really valuable skills that'll help build wealth in the future. Let me tell you what I mean by that. So like wholesaling is the entryway, but getting an actual property that you own as a rental property is powerful. Because 5 years ago, I bought a house for $194,000 and it rented for like $1,500. And 5 years later, nobody was renting this house anymore. It cash flowed like $300 a month, But I realized the rents had gone up to $2,800 in the area because the area had appreciated so much. So when people are looking for houses to rent, they were not filtering for my original rent price of $1,500, right? The low end of what they were filtering for in Zillow was probably like $2,000. So I changed the price to like $2,500. I literally couldn't believe it. And then I got a lot of influx of attention, right? So it's so interesting how just holding that property, the rent has gone up. My mortgage has stayed the same. So now instead of cash flowing $300 a month, I'm cash flowing. What is the price difference there? I mean, like $1,100 a month. And now the value of the actual house, if you go on the Zillow's estimate, which isn't perfect, but it tells you something, it's gone up $200,000. So basically in 5 years, the house paid for itself, gave me a little extra money, but I don't see it. I just keep that in its own bank account. But now it's cash flowing even more, right? Like $12,000 a year net. And it also went up $200,000. So that's why it's so valuable to, do wholesaling, learn the skill of how to identify a great real estate deal and get paid along the way for doing it. So really excited about that and have continued to acquire more properties. That was just one example and the first example. So it is why, hey, so it looks like I got 3 viewers on here. Hey guys, our first live. It's me and Ryan, the host of the DealMachine podcast. Ryan has done 425 real estate deals in the last few years since 2019. That's 5 years ago. Good job, Ryan. Yeah, but he started when his boss cut his pay structure. He was like, man, I quit. And he's like, I want to do a wholesaling challenge that I see on the internet. And he made $8,500 like in 2 weeks after quitting his job. So you get paid for finding rundown homes. That's what we're talking about today. So if you guys have questions on that, we would love your questions. Go ahead and post them in the chat, and we will answer your questions.
It's crazy to think that it's been 5 years because time just flies first and foremost. But like constantly for me, when I left my 9 to 5, there was a little bit of like worry on, is this going to be sustainable? Am I going to be able to make enough money to support the family? I had 3 kids and we had a house and we had cars and all these payments to make. And, I had left the comfort of a 9 to 5 job, which was a consistent paycheck and health insurance and all that stuff. And I left all of that behind to pursue the freedom and flexibility that we wanted in our family. And that example of Like somebody dictating that you will be somewhere at a certain period of time just was not something that that lined up, especially on, I don't know if I mentioned it in the story. It was a Saturday. The fact that I had to request time off on a Saturday when my normal hours were already Monday through Friday. This was a Saturday and a monster jam monster truck show. So the fact that I had to request a Saturday off what is also enough. But then the fact that I had to get forced into working there in a it was downpouring rain. There was nobody at this event. It was just an absolute waste of time. And I valued now, especially now, I value my time far more. Like I won't even, if there's a long wait at a restaurant, if I'm not like absolutely in love with the food at the restaurant, I'm not going to wait because my time is worth so much more than just waiting. And so the number of times I would get put in a position where I had to go and work at an event, and it's just like the return of your time is not anywhere close to what you'd value it at. And so wasting your time at an event in the downpour and then making the decision, I'm leaving this event because there's nobody here. I'd not gotten a single sale. Not even a single person walked up to ask questions about the product I was selling. Nobody was out walking around. All the people around me had shut their tents down and moved on. So it was just me, but they were adamant that I stay. And it's just like, it's a control.
You're talking about when you were selling internet, they made you go to events that didn't feel valuable. So even if you're getting paid to go do a job, you didn't feel meaning in what you were doing.
None at all.
Right.
There was no meaning in it. It was such an absolute waste to sit there. And honestly, the company wasn't even making money. It's one of those things. It's to them, it wasn't a big deal because they're forcing someone else to go and do it in the hopes that it might provide or produce a sale. But the fact that, like, even the event people, they should have just shut the event down because there was no one there. And the fact that these employers were willing to put people out there in an absolutely meaningless event just also shows that there was no concern for your livelihood or for you as an individual. For them, it was just like, well, we want the potential business that we're going to get from this event, so we're just going to make you sit there and go. But again, like there's so many extra little things that tie into those situations and those scenarios. The fact that it was raining and everyone else had packed up. To me, you would expect your boss to just call you and say, hey, man, if there's nobody there and it's raining, just pack up and go. But that wasn't even offered to me. I had to make the decision, and it made me feel like I was a bad person, a bad employee. The fact that I'm making a choice to pack all this stuff up and go home, not because I wanted to go to Monster Jam. It was something I had already planned to do weeks in advance. But everyone else, I'm looking up and down the road and there's no other tents. Everybody's packed up and closed down. But here I am, the one guy that's got a boss that's like, no, you're going to sit there. But I have to make that choice and then worry about it for the rest of the day that I might get fired for doing this. That's not a feeling. That's the exact, I hope that I'm relating to someone's emotion that has been through that before, because that's what we're trying to get you away from.
For sure. So, and your solution was quitting that job and making $8,500 in 2 weeks with wholesaling real estate. Would you break down for somebody who's experiencing those same emotions? What were the steps in that challenge that you took?
Yeah. First and foremost, the first step was we had to get the DealMachine app. That was step number one. Step number two was as simple as anything I've ever done in my life. Drive around and identify distressed properties. That is it. As you're doing that, and honestly, Megan and I packed up the 3 kids. We got in the car together and we were driving and doing all of this together as a family. They had books and toys they were playing with, and Megan and I were just tag teaming it. Oh, there's a house. You take that side of the street. I'll take this side. And we added, I think the goal was to add 250 leads in the first week. And we had like 300 or 400 leads in a single day. And then we started sending the postcards, sending that direct mail, and getting those people, getting postcards in those people's mailboxes. And then like you start that process of, okay, you're ahead of it. You know, the mail is going out. People are going to get the postcards. They're going to call, but then what do you need to be prepared to do? You want to start finding buyers and like looking for real estate and investor meetups, looking for investors that are online. Crazy enough, Craigslist was like one of those places people would go to find distressed properties. So scouring Craigslist, scouring Facebook Marketplace, calling realtors, looking, even on using DealMachine, like we found some properties that were all owned by the same people, and then asking realtors, do you know this person? Do you know this person? And calling them and asking them, are you interested in buying more properties? That's the first year that we did it. In fact, the first property that we sold, we got it under contract, and then we immediately reached out to a realtor who knew investors, and they came out that same day and walked through the property and gave an offer that same day that we called her and asked. And so the power of connections and finding a buyer is exactly how you're going to get the deal done really quickly. Like expecting a buyer's list to start it's not going to be there. It's all about tell people what you're doing. Call realtors, tell them what you're doing, ask them if they have any investors looking for properties, and then provide them with value by getting them a property that's a good deal, a good lead. And so, yeah, there's the steps. We went and drove for dollars. We sent postcards to those distressed properties. We fielded the inbound call, went out and walked the property, made an offer, got the property under contract, and then started reaching out to other investors through realtors at the time. That was the only thing I could think to do, was just contact realtors. They know people that are buying. So reach out to them, and then we had it under contract. And in 14 days, I will never forget the feeling. In 14 days, I got a check for $8,500, which was more than any single check I had gotten. I made good money at the internet company. I made decent money as a salesperson, but I'd never seen a check for $8,500. And knowing that I did it in 14 days was like, okay, this is, first off, it started making me realize, okay, my life can look so much different now. Like the possibility that I can do something with this much time involvement and make this much money, then you open up the, okay, if I put 40 hours a week like I would at a 9 to 5, what's the return then? Because I did this in 14 days. If I would actually, and it was definitely not working 40 hours a day. Like there had been times in that first, when we just had a newborn baby. So like helping Meg take care of the kids at home and all of those things were all on the table. So my availability was limited. It was not 40 hours a week. It was every other day. In the morning, I'd do a few hours of work, go out and drive for dollars, do a few hours of work, sit and wait for the phone call to come in, answer the call. I mean, the amount of time investment versus a 9 to 5 is so much less. So it's crazy what we accomplished. And then like it's a repeatable action. Then you just got to make a process for that repeatable action and go out and do it over and over and over.
Right. I'm looking up for some common questions here. So let's see. Do you ever have people locally that ask you questions? Are there other local people that are wholesaling in the St. Joseph market?
Yeah, there are. There wasn't when we started. There are several wholesalers, not local, maybe a couple of them that are local. It's kind of weird. Like we're a really small town, and I grew up here, so I'm not to say like street famous, but I know a lot of people here. I also sold internet services to all of the businesses in town and became the face of the local face for that business. So I knew a lot of people. I know a lot of people. There are a couple wholesalers that are local. They've on occasion, they've come and asked. I think they maybe had a property that they had under contract that they needed help finding a buyer for. I did. In fact, these one wholesalers brought a deal to me. I was at a coffee shop. I was grabbing a cup of coffee. He walked up to me, asked if I was Ryan Haywood. Yes. He's like, I got a deal. I need help finding a buyer for. I'm like, sweet, send it to me. Send it to me. It was this easy. I sent a text to one of my buyers with the pictures that he had just sent to me, all in the span of like 10 to 15 minutes. And within minutes, I had an offer. So I text him back like, hey, I've got an offer at this asking price. Send me the contract. Let's get this deal done. And then, unfortunately, I got ghosted by the other wholesaler. So that's kind of a weird thing. But today, here's a fun story. Today, I got a call from a Sherwin-Williams paint representative in St. Joe, and he was asking if there was things that I needed help with. I gave him a different phone number for somebody else in our company that handles that stuff. But then he was asking questions. He's like, you're on the podcast. I'm like, yeah, that's cool that you know that. He's like, I've watched it a few times. How hard is what's the barrier of entry to get into real estate? Like, how much money do I need? And I told him that the barrier of entry is surprisingly low. And David, you talked about this earlier. There is free resources. There is your legs and your fists. You go and you knock on doors. That doesn't cost anything except for your time. You go and knock on the doors and see if you can get people to do it. So I explained to him the barrier of entry to real estate is incredibly low. Anybody could do it. It's just how you do it and what resources you have available. If you don't have money, obviously you don't want to spend any money until you get some cash flow happening on deals. But then to build the consistency, you need to have a marketing plan. You need to be able to send direct mail or do something. And then also that ties into the do one thing good before you do a bunch of things bad. So it's just those kinds of situations you have when people know what you do and know that you do real estate investing locally. A lot of people will start talking to you, but you have to be willing to share with people what you are doing.
I got a question from somebody. It says, David, I want to do real estate investing like you, but I'm really scared to get started. What do you think are the top fears that you experienced when you were getting started?
It depends on the situation. Are you getting started from nothing and you don't have a 9-to-5? Because if you're walking away from your job, there's a lot of fears behind that.
Sure. Well, he's not saying he's going to quit his job. He said he's afraid to start into real estate investing. You don't need to quit your job to do this.
No.
But I would say, assuming you're talking about wholesaling, where you're not afraid of like buying a bad property, because you're not buying the property in the first place when you're wholesaling, but you're probably afraid to talk to the homeowner because you haven't done this before. That was a fear I experienced. So I said, wait a minute, before I talk to somebody about an off-market deal, why don't I just go find my own property to live in instead of me renting? So I found an old listing on the MLS and I got a really good price, 70% of the asking price. Went through that whole transaction. Great. Now I have a house. Now I rented out some of the bedrooms to my friends. So I've done a deal. I know what it's like to go in a title company. So that for me eliminated a fear to go talk to somebody about an off-market property, because now I had done it. Now I was speaking from experience of closing a deal. So that was a huge fear that I felt that I got over by, let me just see if I could just buy my own house. Another way you can get around that is by, you could hire a coach, right?
Yep.
So like I've hired a lot of coaches throughout my life. The very first coach I probably hired was Ramit Sethi, where he was not a coach directly helping me one-on-one, but he wrote the book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And then he had some online courses about starting a business. So I actually consumed his content. I've hired coaches recently to help me drive a race car. So I could learn from somebody who's been there, done that. So when he says like drive the car on this line, it takes the guesswork out of it and speeds up my learning curve. So the level of driving I'm able to do now is probably something I would not have developed on my own. Had I not hired a coach, it probably accelerated my learning curve 4 years. And then on the business side, I was so inspired by, I actually won a race against 20 other people in the same car when I started last year because of the work I did with my coach. Then I hired a podcast coach. And so that helped, Ryan and I's podcast go from maybe like 60% of the people listening would finish the episode to more like 90 because the coach helped us, nail down our intro and to keep the attention throughout the whole episode, which is really impactful for us because the algorithm pushes out, the podcast more to people who, when people are consuming it, but it also allows us to help other people because we're presenting the information in a way that is easier for people to consume. So Ryan, I know that you recently, did you hire a coach for real estate investing, by the way?
I joined a mastermind for the real estate investing side.
You had gotten started. Masterminds for people who've like done deals already, right?
Yeah. There's a barrier of entry. Like the mastermind, you had to have a minimum of 25 deals done.
Got it.
Just to get in. We did hire a coach for coaching.
Okay.
That was a recent deal.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So you are now coaching people in real estate, right? What does that look like?
Well, we haven't actually started. We opened it up for people to register for it. What we are going to start doing is coaching people through the beginning stages of getting into real estate, how to do it. It's going to be very much like you ask the questions, we give the answers. We've done it. We've been through all of it. And now we want to be able to help as many people as we can get through those hurdles. All the mistakes that we made, we can help other people avoid making those mistakes. And so we're offering our coaching program to as many people as we can.
What is it called?
It is called Deal Flow Academy.
Okay.
And it's the intent behind Deal Flow Academy is to help you build up the processes so you can have deal flow. Like you can have a consistent deal flow. You can get more than one deal that will, in order to leave your 9 to 5, you have the stability of deal flow coming in to help you walk out that door.
What is the place to go to find more info about it?
So I know it's on school, and if you follow Instagram, you go to Heritage Home Investments on Instagram, we've got the link there that you can click. It's a school link. School is a website that is basically like school for a bunch of different things. You can go to school for this, or this, but we have a link in there for a school classroom on our Heritage Home Investments Instagram page. You just click the link and you can sign up through that as well.
Okay, so is it going to be like online courses, or are you going to be like helping?
No, it is not online courses. It's an open forum every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. We're going to do an hour-long Q&A, answering all questions that come up in this Q&A session, walking through the process, explaining the process of how to build the business sustainably, and going through all the nitty-gritty details and going through all the challenges. And just walking everybody through there, wherever you are in your process, we're going to open it up and just as a classroom setting, just talk for an hour every week.
Okay, got it. So yeah, I'm on your Instagram now. Then I see a link tree. Then I see a Deal Flow Academy link.
Yep.
And so it says, Deal Flow Academy is a mentorship group led by Ryan Haywood. That's you. Podcast listeners and Instagram followers have been asking. So you guys are excited to support others that are looking to find success wholesaling real estate. Wholesaling's changed your lives, as you mentioned many times on this live, and it can change others too. So Ryan, it says you completed your first wholesale deal in 2019, which we covered. And it says time is money. Let Ryan give you the steps and shortcuts to success. And the mentorship will give you the support, resources, and skills you need to replace your 9-to-5 income. Great. So it looks like you have 5 members, and you're going to replace your 9-to-5 income with wholesale in 3 months. That's awesome.
It's crazy. My process through, like, I just left, but like if I had to coach somebody through it, I'm like, let's give it 3 months. Let's get you deal flow. Let's get the processes lined out so that the nerves and the things that were scary when I left mine, you don't have to deal with. Like, if you can give us 3 months to get you built up and sustained so that you can go to your boss and just be like, look, I'm done. And when I did that, they walked me out that day. Like, they were like, hey, we're just going to go ahead and give you the 2 weeks notice. Thanks for giving it to us, but we're going to go ahead and have you leave now. So then I immediately, like, I had the freedom immediately to go and just be full-time right away. And so we are going to help you get built up to the point that you're ready to go and have that conversation. I've even thought, I'm like, I would be willing, if I can get you to the point where you're ready to quit, I would be willing to come and pick you up from your office the minute that you turn in your resignation and your last day. I will come and pick you up and we will go to lunch and celebrate that. I think that would be such a cool thing to help walk you out the door of your 9-to-5 and go on to living a much more gratifying life, for sure.
You're going to fly and actually help somebody get out there?
I will fly out and I will help. Cool, I will pick them up from their 9-to-5 that they quit, and we will go to lunch.
That's awesome. What kind of lunch are we getting?
I don't know. Just depends on where we are. I don't know. I mean, if we're in Austin, then there's great barbecue that we could go to.
As well as Kansas City, where you're from.
Kansas City has great barbecue. It just depends on where you're at. Like, we're going to find good food.
Guys, I'd love to give you guys an opportunity to ask a couple more questions in the chat before we sign off today. So again, we're talking about Ryan needed to quit his job because his boss ticked him off. They cut his pay because Ryan was selling too much internet. And they said, Ryan, we want you to make 20% on these commissions anymore. We want you to make 10, right? So he's working just as hard. Now he's making half as much money. Basically, he was like, F you, I'm going to do my own thing. But he didn't really know what his own thing was. He was just so mad he quit his job.
Yep.
Which I understand. It's like you got to do things based on principle sometimes, right? If you just want to respect yourself. So luckily, he found a real estate wholesaling challenge. He found a rundown house and a seller that needed to sell. And then he actually made $8,500 when he had it under contract, but he found some realtors that found a cash buyer that wanted to buy it for $8,500 more than what Ryan had under contract. So Ryan made that assignment fee. He's done over 400 deals since then. Never looked back. That was 5 years ago in 2019. Can't believe that. So now Ryan's wanting to help people that are getting started. You know, we've been doing the podcast for like 150 episodes for the last year and a half. So we're always breaking down the business model of wholesaling real estate, right? I mean, it's hard. It does take work, right? We're not saying it's easy. We're not saying it's get rich quick, but I mean, Ryan said he'll help you. He'll guarantee that you could replace your 9-to-5 income in 3 months if you work for him. That's a pretty good deal, especially if you're on the edge. If you're like, I really have to get out of this terrible job. I don't feel purpose, right? It's like Ryan was working, you know, not only did they cut his commissions, but they were starting to send him to events that they knew would just tick Ryan off, right? Events that like people weren't going to sign up and buy internet at. So Ryan not only felt like his commissions were cut, but he also felt like this job doesn't give me purpose anymore. I'm just doing busy work, right? So that's why Ryan needed to get into wholesaling real estate. So I posted his Instagram in the comments if you guys want to check that out. Let me actually just post the school link to your program too, just make it a little easier. Awesome. Real quick.
You know, I don't know that we've really ever talked. We've always talked about my first deal being 8,500, but my second and third deal were even bigger and crazier. I remember deal number 2, I was sitting at home. Abel was brand newborn. I was rocking him in the chair and I could hear my phone buzzing, but it was up on the mantle. So I had to holler for Megan to come and grab Abel. I grabbed my phone right before it picked up the voicemail, and the guy's name was Bill Clinton. And he had a property that he was wanting to sell. I said, can I meet you there now? And so he agreed to go and meet me. I went there and walked through the property and checked it out. And I just asked him, I'm like, what are you wanting for this property? This was a duplex. So the downstairs unit was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. The upstairs was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath. And he said he wanted 20,000. He wasn't going to negotiate at all. And I tried. I'm like, you wouldn't, come down to 15. He's like, it's 20,000, take it or leave it. And I'm like, okay, 20,000 it is. And Megan and I had signed up to go to an event. It was We Live 2020, hosted by Max Maxwell. And so we were going to this event because I wanted to learn. It was an investment. We closed our first deal, but I wanted to know how to make this sustainable. So we paid to go to this event. We paid for this education, like you were mentioning earlier. We paid to go to this event. But while I was at the event, we found a buyer for the duplex. We assigned it for 40. So I made a $20,000 assignment on my second deal.
Damn,
so
$20,000?
$20,000 on my second deal. We're talking, I have been doing this for probably a month and a half at this point. And in a month and a half, I made $28,000. But deal number 3 was also a duplex. And I also made $20,000 on that one. So we're now almost at $50,000 in less than 2 months of me wholesaling real estate. And I came from not knowing anything about wholesale to doing 3 deals. And in 3 deals, I made dang near $60,000 in 2 months' time, which was more than half of my take-home pay at this 9-to-5 job. So that, again, like, it was all incredibly mind-blowing. In fact, I even have a journal. Like, when I left my 9-to-5, I was very intentional about like journaling through this process and writing down what we were going through. And Megan and I were very nervous about not having enough money to cover our bills. So I wrote down, how much money do I need to have? I need to have this much to cover all of our bills. We need this much for groceries. And I drew a bar graph, and I needed to get there. And I think it was like we needed $6,000 to cover all of our expenses for the month. So for me, it was like, okay, I got to get 6,000.
Right.
And every day I would try to do something that would get me money. In fact, when I went and worked a event serving pizza for a Christmas party, and I made $200, so I draw a little line up to that $200. Okay, I made that. I still need $5,800 more. I got that first deal, blew through that bar graph because that was enough to cover all my expenses on my first deal. But then the second and the third deal that came in, all in that same month and a half window, took what I needed. All I needed was $6,000 to sustain covering our expenses. And in less than 2 months, I made almost $60,000, like 3 deals. And all of that was and that's what really kind of drove us and being such big fans of DealMachine, because all it was driving for dollars. That was it. I didn't have time to cold call. I didn't know what I would be doing if I was cold calling. I was literally just going out, finding properties, sending postcards, and then waiting for them to call me back. And in doing that, I made $60,000 in like no time at all. And that was the realization of like, I don't need to go back to a 9-to-5. Like, that is not, this is totally possible to do this and make a ton of money doing it and never have to worry about anything ever again. There are plenty of concerns that will come up in the process. And that's the whole point of offering education, offering the schooling that we are offering through Deal Flow Academy. Is there are going to be questions, there are going to be concerns, there's going to be hurdles. We've been through all of those. We've done this for the last 5 years. We've found a process that works, and we're going to help everyone get through that so that there's less guesswork.
Love it. Well, I think that's a good place to end. I'm really glad that you're doing the Deal Mentor Academy, Deal Flow Academy. And I posted the link in the comments there. And it's at Heritage Home Investments. Instagram is where the link is. So look Ryan up on there, and just Thank you so much for giving back, Ryan. I know you said it was a goal of yours last year when we started the podcast, and
Yeah.
we've been doing that for a year and a half, 150 episodes, and
Yeah.
people still always have questions, even if we've answered them a few different ways, because I think it's just so helpful when you're starting out to have a one-on-one mentor that has heard your situation, gives you the confidence that then their suggestion is right for you, right? I think that's one of the reasons why content alone doesn't do it, because you're like, well, they're making content for many people. Maybe the advice they're giving isn't right for me because of this really unique part of my situation. And you end up wasting time not taking action because you're not quite confident it is for you. And that's why the one-on-one mentorship, in my experience, the many times I've actually, hired coaches, is so powerful, because I'm like, well, I paid for your knowledge. You know me on a one-on-one basis. So when you tell me what to do, I'm going to go do it, because I know
Yeah.
you know my situation and I've paid you to tell me what to do. So now that I've paid for you and I know you know about me, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And that's why it gets the results so quickly. So with that, we wish you guys happy deal finding, and tune into the Deal Machine podcast 3 times a week. If you're looking for a place to start, I'd recommend episode 139, which is the 7-day challenge. And with that, we'll sign off now and see you guys on the next one.
See you, everyone.